Hey guys, how's it going? Long time no see. Want to give a little bit of an update. A lot has changed in the last couple weeks. For one, I am out of school and I have officially left the company I was working at. So BitNations is now my full-time focus. And so with that comes the launch of Premium, which I will talk a little bit more about towards the end of this video. But primarily what I want to talk about in this video is our new issue submission system. As a lot of you have requested, you have wanted to experience more in-game issues. For example, the issues that appear at the top of the screen that you have to respond to, and those issues impact your nation in various ways and change your government type. So to create a new issue, you can go to bitnations.com/issues. This will actually show you issues that are approved in the game. And sorry, I froze for a second because I forgot I have admin authentication, and so these are pending issues that have not been approved yet. But what you'll see on your screen is approved issues that are actually live in the game. And if you go to /issue/new, if I could spell new correctly, there we go. This is where you can create a new issue. If you see all in-game issues, and then of course submit an issue at the bottom there. So I want to talk a little bit about issue submission and kind of how it works and how your responses to issues impact your nation. Just to kind of help you guys out a little bit as you're doing this. That have come in today. And if you select an issue, it'll actually kind of break down what age the issue is available in, a description of the issue, and then each of the responses with the cost of those responses. One thing to note on this view is the number is the correct value. The sidebars, sliding bar thingies, they're kind of like not actually accurate totally. Like this 0.5 is accurate, but this -2 is not, because this is, anyway. So it kind of gives you an idea, but it's not actually numerically accurate, but the numbers here are accurate. And so let's go ahead and create an issue and talk about that. So the way issues are generated is by random. Some issues follow a narrative. Some issues, particularly user-generated issues, just kind of appear by random, and they're done by the economic age you're in. So issues should be kind of related to the era that we select. So for example, Stone Age issues, as you've seen in the game, are kind of more related to like villages and the very early stages of humanity, whereas Industrial Age issues might be something related to unfair working conditions or industrialization. Discovery Age might be colonialization. Information Age, singularity, those might lean more towards big tech or machine learning. So all the issues we experience throughout history and today and beyond are all good things to incorporate in the game. So let's just create a fun issue just to kind of illustrate some of the things. So I'm going to make an issue for Space Age, let's just say. And most issues start with an emoji. So let's just build a rocket here. And let's just make the issue of a growing number of people in your nation want to create like a space program. Let's just roll with this. A growing number of people in your nation want to create a space program. Now, these are going to be the responses that the choices that the user has to respond. So if we quickly just go back to our guide here, game guide, which kind of describes issues. Issues look like this, right? So you'll see something like low wages, and then you have choices, and you select one, and then you click decide. So we can now fill out these decisions and the impact they have on the nation. So we could type in one response, which is, no, this is a waste of money, for example. And in order to access the fields, just maximize this response. That's what these are for, is just collapsing it to make it a little easier to edit this on the screen. And you can see there's various things we can impact. we have economic freedom, personal freedom, political freedom. We have happiness, intelligence, freedom, and influence. So one thing I just kind of want to point out is the first three, the ones that have this kind of government-looking building next to them. These affect the XYZ axes of your political spectrum, of where your nation falls on a political spectrum. So the first axis being economic freedom. So a negative number meaning less economic freedom, and a positive number meaning more economic freedom. Let me make sure that's actually correct. I didn't prepare at all. I just turned on the camera and started talking. So we can take a look here, and not that project. That's a different project. If we open up our government model, in here are all the different government types. And so if we were to look at like libertarian, yes. So positive numbers appear to be the less authoritarian, where negative numbers are the authoritarian side of things. So just want to double check that to make sure that's correct. So if something is like totalitarian, or if something is provides less economic freedom or more economic freedom. So more economic freedom would go to the right, less economic freedom would go to the left. Okay, and you'll notice that this slider goes between a value of -1 and 1. 0 would be no change at all. Nothing's going to change. And so your government type is these three values between -1 and 1. And the way your government type label, whether it's authoritarian or republic or democracy or monarchy, it looks at the political spectrum of where you are, where your nation is, and then it kind of rounds those numbers in order to fit it into a label. So what that means is, as you're making decisions and changing your mind or changing direction on things, or just responding to issues in general, some issues might not have a major impact. Some issues, you might be like authoritarian, but you do something that's like a little bit of freedom adding, but you're like, hey, I'm still authoritarian. It could take time to actually kind of adjust, which is kind of the idea behind it. Like, one decision doesn't completely dramatically change your government type. So your label kind of changes. It kind of has to round those numbers a bit. So just a little tidbit. I know there's a lot of information for just like creating an issue, but I figured the more background and the more information I can give you guys, the more you understand it. And plus, a lot of you guys ask me questions about this and are very curious how it works. So, your nation, for example, the three values may be -0.3, 0.5, and -0.5. And this would round to, a particular type of government label. So anyway, back to our example. Should we build a space program? So we've covered kind of the first three attributes, which are the political spectrum attributes. And it is a little confusing because there's another thing, freedom, down here. So as you may have noticed, if you play the game, happiness, intelligence, and freedom, this is referring to your population stats. Quite literally, like these guys are right here. Happiness, intelligence, freedom. Spirituality has not been added yet, but it probably will. Actually, that's probably an important one to add. But you guys have always kind of asked questions on how you can impact these stats, and there are ways to impact it through spending and tax cuts and crime rate and stuff like that. Of course, if you ever have questions about that, just go to the game guide and look at population, and it kind of tells you how you can increase those stats. But the other way to do it is through responding to nation issues. So, for example, we could assume that like creating a space program is probably going to increase your population's intelligence a bit, or by not creating one, probably decrease. And the way we make these assumptions is just kind of based on real life. The space program has created like a ton of jobs. It's created credit demand for STEM degrees. So, some people might argue that the military, the U.S. Space Force and the military spending on space is probably the best thing for science. Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think, kind of advocates for that. Anyway, the point is, kind of have to use our generalized knowledge of the world, and nothing's perfect. So, it doesn't have to be exact. It's not a perfect science. It's a video game at the end of the day. So we might say, okay, definitely our intelligence is going to be impacted, and like frankly, people like might not be so happy that we're like not keeping up with the rest of the bit world, the bitverse on space. Freedom's not really affected. We're not taking anyone's rights away. We're not like giving anyone more rights. So if we leave it at zero, it's just not going to have much of an impact. And then influence, of course, is your nation's influence. So this decision, does this win us favor with our population? Does it not win us favor? For this response, I'll probably keep it neutral. And then, of course, economic freedom. This is kind of a tricky example to work with because when you're thinking about the political spectrum of like economic, personal, political freedom, you're thinking more in terms of like, does the government get involved? Does the government not get involved? For example, with political freedom, an example may be requiring IDs to vote. If your nation requires an ID identification card to vote, that might reduce political freedom. If your nation says, hey, anybody can vote, that might increase political freedom. Personal freedom could be something like abortion, for example. If your government outlaws abortion, that would be a reduction in personal freedom versus legalizing abortion being an increase in personal freedom. Or another example might be guns rights or Second Amendment rights in the U.S. That's a very U.S. issue. And economic freedom may be, well, should the government regulate this industry? What if the government chooses to nationalize an entire industry? That'd be quite a impact on economic freedom, kind of on the negative end of the spectrum, where a more laissez-faire capitalist government that says, no, we're not going to touch it, we're not going to get involved, might be more economic freedom, basically unbridled capitalism. So this one's kind of tricky because the government, this is kind of a weird example because it doesn't really impact your nation too much. I guess you could make the argument that like, hey, maybe the economic freedom goes up a little bit because the government's not coming in and like doing stuff and like spending money in the economy. Maybe you can make the argument for that. So I'll kind of just leave this here for now. I'm not going to actually create this issue now. This is just an example for you guys. I probably should have picked a better example. Maybe we'll do another one after this. But one important thing to remember when you're making these issues is there is some level of opinion in it, and it really depends on where you're from geographically and politically. And so, right now, we as kind of users are just making assumptions on how to fill out this form. But in the future, the way I imagine this working is that your population will have its own will. And so then your decisions you make impact that population as well. And what I mean by that is, let's go to response 2 and say, yes, let's start a space program. So you and I might think that's amazing. But like, there could be people out there who are like, no, this is a waste of money. The government should absolutely not be doing stuff like this. And so what I mean by when I say in the future, your population will have a will of its own is these attributes will actually kind of be generated by the game and won't have to be input by us as we're creating these issues. So your own particular nation, your people may not find this as a good solution. Whereas another player, their people might love the idea. So that's not in the game yet, but that's the direction I want to head in. So for now, we kind of just have to generalize, and we kind of just have to be as objective as possible with our opinions, and assume that in general, people might like a space program. In general, a space program would increase intelligence, and maybe perhaps gain us some influence, because political leaders who do good things or have high approval ratings have a lot of political pull, which is basically what influence is. We attribute John F. Kennedy in the United States, JFK, as being like responsible for putting a man on the moon, but of course we didn't put a man on the moon till years after JFK was already gone. So that's political influence in a nutshell. That's the way I think about it, at least. It's kind of, especially like bureaucratic systems or democratic systems, you have to, use your political influence to gain favors in the system to make decisions, which is why influence is a decision-making currency in the game. So you might say, no, this is a waste of money. This might like lose influence because like if your people really wanted this, or people and the nation's will wanted that, but you went against it. Maybe you lose influence. Or maybe the way you could think about it is, no, this is going to cost you influence. This costs you influence to make this program. It's not free. Or maybe it's like actually the benefits outweigh the cost, and like, sure, it costs something, but like people really love you for it. So there's a lot of leeway and room you can go with making these issues. Let's do another example. Let's just do gun rights, because that's a hot topic. And also a little more black and white, a little more easier to understand on the political spectrum. So let's do, is there a gun emoji? It's like a squirt gun, right? Yep. Oh, I guess it's like a ray gun on the emoji library we use. Oh, it's like a squirt gun. It's like a different kind of squirt gun. It's actually a better squirt gun. Anyway, violent crime, like maybe it's like violent crime is at an all-time high, and the description is people against violent crime are advocating that we abolish citizens' right to bear arms. Wow, forget all my crazy typos. Okay, so the first response would be like, yes, ban all firearms, or like make it illegal for any private citizen to own a firearm, require a mandatory buyback program. Buyback program, it's kind of like what Australia did, where you kind of voluntarily turn in your guns and the government gives you money for them. Which is better than trying to forcefully take guns, because that probably won't work. So let's just kind of focus on, we'll forget the population stats. Let's just kind of focus on the freedom thing. So first, let's look at personal freedom. That's pretty much what this is addressing right here. So if we were to make the private ownership of firearms illegal, this would definitely be a negative to personal freedom. People would be losing their right to self-preservation. They'd be losing their right to protect themselves, and they'd be losing their right to own a piece of private property, which is a gun being seen as like property. So how much that goes, again, might vary on some level of opinion of like, yeah, it's a little bit of a right, or like, yeah, this is like totally tyrannical. But we'll put it somewhere in the middle. But it would definitely be a negative effect on personal freedom. And one could also argue that this also has a negative effect on political freedom. One of the biggest arguments in the United States is that you need the Second Amendment in order to protect your First Amendment. So the right to bear arms protects your right to free speech, because if you don't have kind of the guns to back it up, what's the point of having free speech? And so we could argue that, yeah, our political freedom might be a little bit taken away because we don't really have a significant way of even protecting our freedom of speech rights, our political freedom of speech. So that's the first part of it. Making it illegal to own a firearm probably affects personal political freedom. Require a mandatory buyback program. This is also interesting. Adding that second on, it kind of impacts economic freedom a little bit too. You can imagine, for one, actually the issue as a whole affects economic freedom. For one, it's you're killing the gun business. So gun manufacturing, ammunition manufacturing, shooting ranges, companies that make targets for shooting ranges, companies that make bullets, produce gunpowder. So you can imagine a pretty large industry is being made illegal and now probably going out of business. So that's definitely a massive government involvement in economic freedom. It would be like if the government decided to make cars illegal or something like that, because cars, a lot of people die from auto accidents. Or maybe a better example, more realistic example, is a government banning manual driving cars and requiring only self-driving cars because they're safer. So that would be a pretty significant economic impact. And this would also be in the negative. A mandatory buyback program, as well as kind of the government intervening in an economy, setting artificial prices for things in the market since they're illegal. So either underpaying or overpaying for guns, because the goal isn't to profit off the guns. or the goal isn't to give people the market price for the gun. The goal is just to obtain the gun. And so there's a little bit of market manipulation, I guess you could make the argument for. But overall, I would say that an issue like banning guns um, would result in some negative values on the economic, personal, and political freedom scale. Again, I'm from the United States. I grew up with the Second Amendment, right? And so my perspective may vary differently from people in other parts of the world. So it's important to keep that in mind, but to try to be as objective as possible until I kind of build this feature out where your country's people have a will of their own. And so then the game kind of shifts from just responding to issues to like, how do you keep your people happy while also trying to form the government you want? And so that becomes a much more nuanced game, and I'm excited for that feature to roll out, probably not for a little while. And so, yeah, that's kind of the idea behind here. Of course, one response is required at a minimum, but I recommend filling out 2 to 3 responses. Typically how I do it is just to kind of go two extremes and then a middle ground. So this one is like, nope, make all firearms totally illegal, buy them back, whatever. You could even be more extreme and be like, arrest all people with a gun or something like that. And then, that's a little bit more extreme. So, now we're just straight up arresting people, or forced gun confiscation or something, forced gun confiscation. Can I spell? Something like that. And then the other side of it may be like, no, expand civil guns rights. Like, what if we went the other way and it says like people should be able to own tanks, own tanks, missiles, and jet fighters? Hey, if they could afford them, why not? I would love an F-35. That'd be awesome. I'd just keep it parked in my backyard all day. And so then this might be like, wow, okay, talk about you open up the market, maybe some economic freedom, some personal freedom, political freedom. Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's going to be a tough one to take away once people have, all that stuff. And of course, I'm just kind of playing around here. Issues require a lot more critical thinking than just that. But the point is, we have kind of one extreme, the other extreme, and then maybe something in the middle, which is like maintain the right for citizens to own guns, but ban, fully automatic weapons and weapons of war or something like that, for example. So maybe this is like, okay, this is a little bit of government involvement, but we're not fully banning it. So it doesn't really impact economic freedom as much. I guess there's a slight less choice and what's available in the market. Personal freedom might go down a little bit. Political freedom might go down a little bit. And so you could see kind of the span from like a negative. Let's just make these a little more extreme for the sake of example here. -3, -6, -4, +4, +4, +3, and then -1, -2, -1. So that's the way I like to do it. I do like to kind of have kind of like a more extreme one on both sides, or 2 different sides, because there's more than just 2 sides to every issue. It's really a 3-dimensional spectrum. So pick kind of 2 ones in any kind of extreme, and then something kind of in the middle. It's what I do. And of course, the user, I believe, does have the option to just ignore the issue, which would basically do nothing. They just ignore it. And so that's that. So once you fill this out and you're happy with it, you can go ahead and click submit. And it'll submit it, and it will give you the overview of what you just submitted. And then on my end, I'm able to review the issues. What you'll notice is I will come in and make some changes to your issue. So for example, a lot of the early submissions didn't have, oh wow, we have a lot more issues coming in today. Wow, I'm way behind. A lot of issues didn't have an emoji with them, and it's an emoji based game. So I see you guys started adding, I like the earthquake one, that's cool, and the food shortage one. You guys started adding in inflation. That's cool. You guys started adding the emojis, which is really cool. So when I approve, in order for it to be in the game, I have to approve it. I will kind of review like, yeah, okay, makes sense. This isn't the technological age. An earthquake can happen in any age. In fact, maybe we'll have the same issue appear in multiple ages. I'll proofread it. I'll make sure it's grammatically and spelled correctly. I may reword it a little bit to just make it a little easy. I may elaborate a little bit more to explain the issue in more detail or present more information. And then I will review these values as well. So I'll make sure that these are the negative and the positive make sense. You know, sometimes it's easy to mix it up and get it the other way around. So I'll definitely kind of proofread it and come in here. So you may notice that it's a little bit different in the game from when you submitted it, but I try to keep the heart of the issue and the responses you guys have come up with as true to the original work as possible. So that's the issues thing. This has been a long time. In the request bucket, I finally got around to doing it. It took a few days because I did not realize I would have to completely refactor the way issues work and how it changes your government type. And speaking of government types, that leads us into something really cool with the premium feature we have launched now. So if you are a premium user, it's only $1.95 a month. You can create an alliance. You will be able to add links to an alliance, like your Discord link or your website link. You will be able to change your government type. You'll have unlimited terms, a maximum of 200 influence, custom badges, no ads when ads are implemented, and early access to new features and your Discord rank, of course. So I'll go ahead and kind of show you some of these features. So first on the chopping block is alliances. You will see a big green button down here that says create alliance when you are a premium member. I already have an alliance here, mostly for testing, but it's there, the BitUnion Alliance. If you go to settings, edit nation, you'll see this premium options field in here. This is for premium subscribers. Your maximum influence is increased to 200. So if I go to my dashboard here, my nation dashboard, you'll see I have 130 influence, whereas normally the max is 100. I have a little bit more, and if I hit the next button, you'll see that will increment. The next thing is I can change my government type. So in the game right now, your government type is dependent on the decisions you make, how you respond to those issues that we just went over. And premium members can choose what government type they want. They can customize that. And as well, the nation badge. This is also part of it. This is more of a fun feature, aesthetic feature. But when you're looking at nations, wow, look how, wow, a lot of you guys are playing right now. Holy crap. I just updated my nation and yeah. Anyway, the nation badge is publicly displayed to everybody in the game on your nation show view, on your nation link here. So that's pretty cool. And you can make it whatever emoji is available in that drop-down menu. What else do we got? Ads are not implemented in the game yet, but they will be. Ads, when they are implemented, are not going to be annoying, are not going to be pop-up ads. Excuse me, they are simply just going to be, the user can choose to watch an ad to get some of the benefits of premium. Of course, over time, it's better to just subscribe to premium. And especially as I we continue to launch features out there for you guys. And since I have you all here and we're talking about updates, we are rewriting the app to be mobile, like iPhone, Android, desktop, native, excuse me. And that's going to take a little bit of time. So feature development has slowed a little bit on the actual web game while we rewrite the game and make it a lot faster, a lot higher performance, and native, which will just bring about a much better user experience. But in the meantime, within alliances, one feature that will be launching in the next couple of weeks is the completion of the elections system. And this ties into premium because in premium, sorry, I clicked up there. In premium, you are allowed to be a dictatorial alliance, which means you basically are in control of your alliance forever. But for all the free alliances out there, they are democratic. I know there's a lot of controversy over this decision, but it's for good reason. As you notice, looking at alliances, there's a lot of very large alliances that are no longer active, such as NATO. I think I've reserved NATO now temporarily until the elections functionality is built. But 500 members, you know, it's the second largest alliance in the game and nobody runs it. And so, because whoever created it years ago when the game first launched probably doesn't play the game as much or doesn't play the game currently. And so it kind of just sits there. So the idea is, if you're a free alliance, every month or so, there's an election cycle. And so if you're not an active user in the alliance, somebody else will take control of the alliance. The difference is if you're a premium member, because you're paying, it's safe to assume that you are an active user. And so you will take an active role in running the alliance. And if you cancel your membership, it just simply, you're still in charge of the alliance. It just simply converts it to a democratic alliance. And then eventually over time, there will be an election. As well, I think you could also still choose to be a democratic alliance, even as a premium member, if you so choose. So that's kind of the direction that's going in, and I hope to launch that in the next 2 weeks as we're rewriting and getting ready for the mobile app to launch. I think that's all the updates I have for you guys. I completely improv this video. It was totally unprepared. I didn't even know what I was going to talk about, but I wanted to go over some of the new features. I know there's a couple of bugs, especially when it comes to some of the new features like with trade and war. I am getting around to fixing that. There's a lot of exciting things to come as well as improvements. But yeah, ultimately, I think you guys could expect to see the new election system and alliances. And then at that point, probably not many updates until we see this is what I'm looking for, until we see the election stuff, until we see the mobile app roll out. And then just one side note on premium, it's really easy checkout. It's Stripe. I think they make it really easy to check out. It's cancelable anytime. And if you have any concerns or any issues with it, just direct message me on Discord at any time. I'm super responsive. I love hearing your guys' ideas and feedback. And this project's just a total work in progress. And I love working on it. And I love taking your ideas and turning it into a reality. So if you are a premium member, you will find I am much more responsive, because I get a lot of messages from you guys, and I try to be as responsive as possible to everybody, especially in like the general channel on our Discord. But yeah, you'll find that I'll probably reach out to you at some point if you're a premium member and just ask how it's going and what feedback and input you have. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. I'm really appreciative of the entire community. You guys are really, really awesome, really cool, and I'm learning so much doing this project and learning so much from you guys. And I hope you enjoy the game. Cheers.